Imagine sitting down at a table and being offered a bowl of roasted crickets or some grasshopper tacos. To many in the West, this may seem novel or even strange, but to others around the world, insects have long been a part of the culinary landscape. In recent years, the West has embraced bug eating as a trendy, sustainable solution to global food challenges. Advocates tout insects as the food of the future, emphasizing their low environmental impact, and the fact that many cultures have been eating them for centuries. But there's a problem with this narrative. The Western push for bug eating often misappropriates insect-eating traditions without understanding or respecting their cultural significance. What's being framed as forward-thinking and eco-conscious is, in reality, a superficial and commercialized interpretation of deeply rooted practices. In the West, eating bugs has been transformed into a shiny new trend. Proponents often cite cultures in Thailand, Mexico, or Uganda, pointing out that these communities have been consuming insects for generations. To many, this serves as proof that eating bugs is both normal and beneficial. But this narrative overlooks an important detail. In many of these cultures, eating insects isn't a choice made out of sustainability. It's tied to necessity, environmental conditions, or seasonal abundance. Bugs are often consumed because they are accessible and affordable, not because they're the preferred source of protein. By ignoring these underlying factors, the pro-bug movement cherry-picks from these traditions, stripping away the context and presenting insect eating as a universal ideal. This is cultural appropriation, not cultural appreciation. In cultures where insect consumption is common, the practice is often tied to specific circumstances. In some parts of Southeast Asia, for instance, insects like crickets and grasshoppers are consumed because they are abundant and cheap during certain seasons. Similarly, in Africa, locust swarms are harvested not just for food, but as a way to mitigate crop destruction. These examples demonstrate a relationship with insects that is deeply pragmatic. People eat bugs when other protein sources, like fish or meat, are unavailable or unaffordable. For these communities, bugs are rarely the first choice. They're a practical solution to a specific challenge. When the pro-bug movement overlooks this reality, it distorts the practice into something it's not: a deliberate, environmentally driven preference. What makes this appropriation even more troubling is how it strips away the cultural meaning tied to insect consumption. In places like Mexico, insects such as chapulines or grasshoppers have been eaten for centuries, particularly in regions like Oaxaca. But their consumption is deeply woven into local traditions, reflecting the history, flavors, and seasonal rhythms of the community. Chapulines aren't just food, they're a cultural experience, often paired with spices and lime to create a dish that tells a story about the region's heritage. When Western advocates push bugs as a global sustainability solution, they erase these layers of meaning, turning a culturally significant practice into a marketing gimmick for protein bars or cricket powder. There's also a glaring double standard in how the pro-bug movement exoticizes these traditions. Advocates often frame the consumption of insects in non-Western cultures as a mark of sustainability and sophistication, implying that the West is behind the curve in adopting these practices. Yet in many of these same cultures, insects are seen as a last resort rather than an ideal food. Many people would prefer conventional proteins like meat or eggs if they were more accessible or affordable. By romanticizing bug eating while ignoring the realities of economic hardship and scarcity, the movement perpetuates a distorted narrative that overlooks the lived experiences of the people it claims to celebrate. This kind of selective praise positions the West as the ultimate arbiter of which traditions are worth adopting, while dismissing the voices of the communities that originated them. Cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation are not the same thing. Appreciation requires a deep understanding and respect for the traditions and contexts that give a practice its meaning. Appropriation, on the other hand, takes those traditions out of context, repackages them, and uses them for personal gain or ideological purposes. In the case of insect consumption, true cultural appreciation would involve acknowledging the specific environmental and economic reasons that lead certain communities to eat bugs. It would require listening to the people who practice these traditions and respecting the fact that their experiences cannot be easily translated into other cultural contexts. Unfortunately, what we often see instead is a shallow, surface-level engagement with these traditions. Pro-bug advocates highlight the fact that insects are eaten in some parts of the world, but fail to explore the deeper cultural, environmental, and historical factors that make these practices meaningful. Ultimately, the push to normalize insect consumption in the West isn't just about bugs. It's about how we engage with the traditions of other cultures. By reducing insect eating to a sustainability soundbite, the pro-bug movement fails to honor the depth and complexity of these practices. Bugs may have a place in global food systems, but that place must be informed by a genuine respect for the cultures that have been eating them for centuries. If we truly want to embrace global food practices, we need to move beyond cherry-picking and engage with these traditions in a way that honors their full context. Only then can we approach this conversation with the respect and understanding it deserves.